Hey, it's Mark Ferguson with Investor More, and I'm standing outside one of my newest rental properties. It's right there behind me. Now, normally we do a walkthrough, show you the properties, but this one is rented. So today we're gonna go through all the numbers, talk about how I bought it, how much I paid for it, the cash flow we may or may not get while owning it, and then how I got the money to buy it as well. So we do a lot of private money and different things with other people's money, and we're gonna talk about how we're able to buy this property with very little of our own money, which is how I like to do things. And eventually we might refinance it and get better cash flow. And we'll talk about that as well. Sorry, it's a little noisy on this road, but I haven't gotten hit by any snow yet, so that's good. All right, so we'll show you a little bit of the outside of the property, and then we'll dive deep into the numbers on how we're actually gonna make money with this property and how we got money to buy it. So of course, check out investormore.com. If you want more information on what we actually do, in-depth articles, a free ebook on how I got started, and then we love the likes, love the comments, love seeing new subscribers, so keep those coming. All right, let's get started. So we saw the property, and I really want to go into a deep dive on the financials on this, why I do what I do, how I do it, and then what other people can do as well, because I know a lot of people see what I'm doing like, oh, I can never do that. You're doing so many different things and have all this money. Well, you have to start somewhere. I had to start somewhere. I didn't just have a house genie drop all these properties on me. I started with one rental property and built from there. Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just pay cash for these properties? You're doing all these flips, you have all these rentals. Well, I don't have a Scrooge McDuck money room, unfortunately. I wish I did, but I think right now I have $10 million of debt for all the flips, the rental properties, the different stuff we're doing. I've used other people's money over and over again to build and get to where I'm at today. So it's not like it was just a smooth and easy ride and there's all this money just sitting around. It's taken quite a bit of strategy and work and quite a bit of risk as well to do some of the things that I've done. Now, I often use private money now, which is kind of like a friend, family member, coworker, even people I've met on social media, an individual person who knows me. I'm not talking about a hard money company or business. I'm talking about an individual person. And what we'll do is we'll borrow money from them at a pretty high interest rate, get the property rented, stabilized, sometimes we fix them up. Then, once they're stabilized, we'll try and refinance into a longer term bank loan. And that can be trickier said than done as well, because banks sometimes don't want to lend on some of the stuff I do, like commercial properties. It's actually much easier to do it on residential properties. This property will be interesting to see because it's residential with 2 tenants, but it's also zoned industrial. So sometimes that causes problems with banks as well, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe I should talk to the banks before I do this, but I figure it'll just work out. So one of the main things we always do on these to kind of protect ourselves, make sure we don't get in over our head, is I get a good deal on everything, right? So this property, even if it doesn't work out, even if the cash flow isn't amazing, or we can't get the right bank loan after all is said and done, I could sell it and make a good amount of money. So that's the protection, the way to alleviate a lot of that risk is to always get a really good deal. So those are kind of the keys to what I've done, is always get a good deal, use other people's money, and then hopefully your property's cash flow as well. But those are the main ones, and have really good contractors to work on them too. Although this one is already rented and not in bad shape, so that's nice. All right, a lot of people also might ask, well, why don't we use a bank loan from the beginning? Why don't we put 20% down or 25% down, get a bank loan, go through that process, and then it would save us a lot of costs, a lower interest rate, not as many fees. And that's true, it would save us money, but it would be, $60,000 down we would need, which we could do, but that also takes away from other projects. If we're putting 20% down on every single rental property, and we have a lot of rental properties, some very big ones. We bought a $1.35 million property last year, a $600,000 property last year. We're buying another $600,000 property here in a couple weeks that we'll show you. That adds up to a whole lot of money. And we also need a whole lot of money for the flips we're doing, because we have from 10 to 15 flips going at once usually. Those take a lot of cash. Even though we use private money for those too, we're still paying for repairs, we're paying for carrying costs. There's a lot that goes into all of this. And I would much rather use leverage, have extra cash, than be really tight and thin and have the possibility of running out of cash. So that's why we use private money, because it just gives us more of a cushion, more cash to be able to use. and then it gives me more flexibility too. So if I'm using a bank loan to buy a property from the very beginning, they're probably going to want an appraisal. On a property like this, it might be a very expensive appraisal. It's a couple $1,000s. They're probably going to want to do underwriting, of course, credit checks, which is fine. My credit's great, but they'll want to go through this process. It could take 3 weeks or even a month, where I won't get as good of a deal if I have to go through that process, if I have these contingencies in the contract, or if I use private money, they know I'm going to close. I don't have appraisal contingency, no inspection contingency. I can get really good deals on these properties. So that's why we use private money quite a bit as well. And to be kind of honest, sometimes I'm a little bit lazy in sending a text message to my private money lender and saying, hey, you want to do this deal? And he says yes. Like, that's pretty appealing to me, where I don't have to go through the whole bank process and go through the stress of all that. And we can kind of do a lot of these with the banks at one time at a later date, and that's what I'm actually working on right now. 2 is refinancing, like 8 or 9 of my properties at once with one bank, and that process is going slower than I like, as it always do. But I like doing all of it at once and then kind of doing these more in an easier way, doing private money, and then hopefully later on we get everything stabilized and increase our cash flow. And that's one of my goals this year too, is right now I have about $15,000 a month in cash flow coming in from my rentals and properties and different stuff, which really isn't that much when you consider how many properties I have and the equity I have in those properties. But a lot of that's because we have vacant properties not fully utilized for rentals, and those are dragging down that cash flow. So one of my goals is to increase my cash flow $45,000 a month this year. I know it sounds crazy, kind of ridiculous to some of you. Like I said, I started with one rental property back in 2010, but we have so many vacant properties and properties we can improve on that I actually think that'll be easier than it sounds. So we'll try and keep tabs and touch base on that goal throughout the year as well, and see how all that goes. All right, so now let's really dive into these numbers and see if this property even will make any money at all. We'll see. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. All right, so we've got a new setup, new webcam. We'll see how this works. Hopefully it's okay. My old webcam was pretty blurry looking, so hopefully this one looks better, but I know it's got some weird lighting things going on I have to work on too and fix, so sorry about that if it looks too crazy. So I did a quick little PowerPoint presentation for this property, and of course check out investormore.com. Lots more information there. So we put very little money down to buy this property. But when you do that, there's a trade-off, because if you put little money down, you usually have little cash flow, and it's like pros and cons to both of them. So we're going to go over the numbers on different scenarios here to show you. All right, so how much did we actually spend on this property? I have the HUD one, I think they're called that still, the settlement sheet for how much I paid. And yes, I literally brought $346 to closing. But I technically paid more than that because I had $4,000 of earnest money I paid to start with. So $285,000, paid $4,000 in earnest money. There's some tax certificates, a closing fee to the title company, recording fees, and then here's a new loan amount I got from my private lender, and full amount, but I pay 2 points. So it's basically 2% of the loan amount he gets. So he'll wire this $285 minus $5,700, and then we got some tax credits because it's the end of the year. They haven't paid taxes yet, so we get credits from them for when we pay taxes coming up here in the next year, and all that comes out to me paying $346. But technically I paid $346 plus the $4,000, $4,346 to buy this $285,000 house. We'll talk about the pros and cons of doing that now. Now, when I bought my very first rental property in 2010, I think I put 25% down, but I also only paid $97,000 for it. So back then, right, that was such a small purchase price, it wasn't that much money. I actually got that money from refinancing my personal house. So I refinanced my personal house, did a cash out refinance, had $40,000, $50,000 to invest into rental properties, used that to buy my first rental, and then about 10 or 11 months, saved up some more, used some of that to buy my second rental. And that's really how I got started with rental properties myself. I love rentals. That's kind of a life-changing moment for me, was buying those rentals, building equity, net worth, cash flow, all of that. Things have changed a lot, prices are higher, and it makes it a little more difficult, but it's still worthwhile in my opinion. We're still buying rental properties. So with this one, my payment would be $23.75 because I'm basically using, I think it's a 10% private money loan, interest only. So the rate is very high. I pay 2 points. We'll show you that here. And that makes the money expensive, but it's so easy to use. That's the thing. I send a text. I can close in a week if I want to. There's no appraisal. There's no loan conditions, anything like that I have to worry about. And because it's so easy, I can close fast, it gets me a better deal. So it's not just that it's easy to use a loan, it gets me a better deal too. Now, property taxes on this property are fairly cheap, $130 a month. Insurance, probably about $150 a month. And then I also account for vacancies, right? In case the property goes vacant, we need time to re-rent the property. I just have 5% of the rents in there for $120 a month. Maintenance, again, $120 a month. But again, this property, if it does become vacant, we have to re-rent it. I'm assuming I'll have capital expenditures fixing up the property, more costs than this just $120 of maintenance a month. But this is just kind of for like the cash flow part of it, not the overall picture. And property management, I said we brought that in-house. It's been going fairly well, but I still have a cost allocated to it because it costs me money to pay my staff and do different things. And it's still, and if I didn't have it in-house, right, I'd be paying another property management company. So I have that fee in there. And so overall, the total expenses are $3,045 a month with my private money set up, and rent is $2,400 a month. So like I said, it's not exactly the best rental on paper having it set up the way I have it set up now. But I still like the deal, and I'll show you why here. So moving to cash flow with a bank loan. And hopefully my picture up here isn't messing everything up. If it is, we'll fix it next time. But like I said, we're doing a new setup. I just realized that. But anyway, the loan amount, if we did a bank loan, would probably be 80%, maybe 75% of the purchase price. Our purchase price was $285,000. That's what the loan amount would be, approximately that. So that's great. You have a lower loan amount, but you also need $62,000 for your down payment, closing costs, points, appraisal, other fees, and that's a pretty big chunk of money. And that's the issue you get when you're buying more expensive rentals. The down payment gets higher and higher and higher. Some people don't have it. It takes money you can do from other things like flipping or, buying cars. Now, that's more of a joke, but it takes away, a lot of available cash. Your mortgage payment is very low, $1,165. That's based on a 4.5% interest rate. I use bank rate amortization schedules or their loan calculator for this really great site. You can see how much you pay off all the time. And then you have property taxes, insurance, the same costs we had on the other loan amount too. So with all of this together, your total expenses are $1,835. Way, 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 way cheaper, right? With rent of $2,400, now you're making money. Plus, you're paying down the loan $300 a month as well, because my other loan was interest only. With a bank mortgage, I'm paying principal and interest, so I'm paying down the loan as well. So that's kind of like a bonus. But the trade-off, you're making, $1,500 more a month, but you're paying $62,000 more, and there's more trade-offs there as well we'll talk about here soon. So, why would we do private money when it's so much more expensive? Well, you can do cash flow with a bank loan after using private money. So you do private money first, and then you refinance it into a bank loan later on. Now, there's a lot of different options with this now. There's local banks. Some big banks will do it. There's even some bigger national rental property lenders as well. If you go to investformore.com and go to the resources page, I list a lot of those lenders who will lend on rental properties. So now we're looking at a higher loan amount because this property is really worth like $450,000 if it was advertised right with the current rents in maybe a little bit better shape. When I bought it, I didn't even know what the rents were. They weren't listed. I didn't even know what the rents were until I got it under contract and saw the leases right before closing. If they would have had that listed how much it was rented for, it would have sold for so much more money and so much faster. But anyway, we won't tell them that. So if I were to get an appraisal, it would be around $450,000, I think, for the total value. 2 houses, garage, zoned industrial. And that's another trip up with the zoning be industrial with some banks. Some banks will be fine with it. They'll be cool with it. Others might have a problem with it. So that's another reason why private money is nice, because there's no issue there. Now, if I'm doing this kind of a loan amount on a $450,000 value, when you're doing a refinance, it's usually a 75% loan to value, not 80%, but some lenders will do 80%, but that's something to think about too. If our loan amount is $337,000 based on 75% loan to value, we're actually getting money back. So after doing the private money, stabilizing the property a little bit, although it doesn't need much now, and getting a new appraisal, right, we can actually take money out of this deal instead of spending it. So that's a huge advantage of private money. Now you could use a regular bank loan and do the same thing and refinance it later on. You just have, a lot more into it as far as down payment to begin with, and more problems we'll talk about here in a second. But with this option, your mortgage payment jumps up to $1,710 because of the higher loan amount. We're still saying these costs are the same. Your total expenses are $2,380 with a rent of $2,400. Again, not great cash flow, but you've got a whole lot of equity here. And you've got money coming back to you. You're not spending money on the deal. Plus, now you're paying $440 a month on the mortgage. So that's a nice bonus. And you'll have tax advantage of owning this rental property, so you'll be able to depreciate it. It can actually be a really nice tax help if you owe a lot of taxes. So those are the two options. And this is the ideal situation and what I shoot for. Sometimes you run into problems and issues with the banks, but if you can pull this off, you have a property that's making some money, has a ton of equity, you're getting cash back out of it, and our rents are probably a little low on it. So if the tenants ever do move out, we can go in there, fix it up a little bit, and probably get rents closer to $3,000 a month, which increases the value even more, and just kind of balloons. So even if your properties don't make an absolute ton of money with cash flow, I still love rentals. You just have to be prepared for these situations and know, hey, I've got plenty of cash reserves. If something goes wrong, if a tenant moves out, I can make the payments for a while. And if you're doing the private money to regular bank money, which is commonly known as the BRRR, buy, repair, rent, refinance, repeat method, no, it's going to be more expensive, and you might be losing some money here before you get that whole refinance done. So finally, why use private money? Well, it costs me more money. When I say that, I mean I have more expenses. I'm not cash flowing as much, but it saves me cash. So it's more expensive if you look at the whole picture, but it saves me a ton of cash, and cash is very important in real estate. You want to have cash available. One of the worst things you can do, riskiest things you can do, is run yourself very low on cash, which we have done before. And it can be a little sketchy and scary, but so it's good to have as much cash available because things can get very expensive, especially when you're doing the amount of projects we are doing. Now, with a higher loan amount, it can be easier to refinance just the loan out. So what am I talking about here? Well, when I do a private money loan and it's $285,000, some lenders, right, make it much easier to refinance if you're replacing a loan and not taking any cash out, right? If I have a $285,000 loan now, whether it's private money, hard money, bank loan, and I just want to replace that loan, do another $285,000 loan, it can often be much easier to do that than to get a $350,000 loan where I'm taking cash out. So in some cases, that higher loan amount is actually easier to do the cash out refinance, or easier to do a refinance if you're not doing the cash out. So that's something to consider. And I probably got a better deal. Now, if I'm doing a bank loan, I've got to do an appraisal, have loan contingencies, have underwriting. It's going to take me longer. The seller's going to be like, oh, with a bank loan, is this really going to close? It's zoned industrial. Maybe there's repairs the appraiser might call out, right? I probably couldn't have got as good of a deal by using a bank loan. I may have had to pay $300,000 more, or maybe they just would have said, no, we're not doing any bank loan. It's got to be cash or private money or hard money. So using private money gets me better deals, gives me this property that has a whole lot of equity in it. Now, there's not much cash flow, but after the refinance, we do pay down the loan. We have tax advantages and lots of equity, which I talked about before. So we're not really losing money on this property. We're not making a ton, but over time, real estate usually goes up. There can be ups and downs, but by paying off the loan, having those tax advantages, and using time and inflation in your favor, right? Rents will keep kind of going up, property values will kind of keep going up, and the loan will keep going down, and actually be a really good rental property in the future. And we've seen that with lots of my rental properties I bought in the past, where maybe they weren't amazing rental properties from the very start, but now they are. And then also I want to mention, this is why we've been selling some of our properties and not keeping all of them as rentals, because there's minimal cash flow and so much equity that it takes a lot of time to make that cash flow back as opposed to just selling it right now. So I love keeping properties. They've been great. They've built me a ton of net worth. So I still want to keep a lot of rentals. I'm keeping my favorite ones, the ones I like the most. But if they aren't my favorite, if they're not in areas I usually buy in, if they have other issues, I'm okay selling them too, because rentals are selling for so much money right now. Investors are paying such high amounts based on the rent they're making. I'm okay selling them, taking that money, and then spending it on, other rentals that I think are better, have more cash flow, or more long-term stability. Finally, I've had some amazing gains from equity from rentals, even with minimal cash flow. Like I said, my single-family rentals did great. They had cash flow, had massive gains, right? You buy one rental property, and, when you first start out, like, oh man, I'm spending all this money to buy this rental property. I had to put all this cash into it. All right, it seems kind of risky, and I'm only making $400, $500 a month. Is it really worth it? And you look at it and say one rental, and it can be, you can see why people don't think it's worth it. But then you look 5-10 years down the road, and it's like, oh, well, now I'm making like $700, $800 a month on the rental. Now I have like tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity in this rental, because my loan's been going down and the values have been going up. And I've had all these tax advantages from the rental. And so when you look at the big picture, and not just at this point right now, but at this point in the future, they're pretty amazing, right? They can create some amazing amounts of wealth, be really cool investments, even though when you're first starting out, it's hard to get your head around, like, oh, I'm spending $50,000 to make $400 or $500 a month, right? That doesn't make much sense. I'm putting all this work into it. It's really hard. It's hard to find deals. But remember, there's so much more to it than just what's happening right when you first buy it at that point. And over time, I think I've shown that rentals can be pretty amazing. I think, we have close to $6 to $8 million of equity in our rental properties right now, commercial, residential, multifamily. And it wasn't like I spent millions of dollars to buy them. I put much less into it, using leverage, using debt, and then using the advantages of time, paying down loans, rents increasing, building equity, value add, all of that. And hopefully this property does that as well. All right, that's it for the numbers. If you want us to do more of this stuff, please let me know. Take some time, but I do enjoy going through the numbers and showing people what you can do with rentals.
All right, thanks for watching. We love the comments, love the likes, keep those coming. As I said, we have tons more information on investformore.com, a free book on there as well that goes over how I got started and how I slowly built up rental properties to get to where we are today. As you can see, this one isn't a massive moneymaker from the very beginning as far as cash flow, but hopefully in the future it'll be a great rental property, and we got a really good deal on it as well. So worst case scenario, we could always sell it if we had to, but hopefully over the next few months, 6 months, 12 months, we get everything stabilized, we refinance it, and then it's a great cash flowing rental property that can help contribute to our kind of passive income number we're trying to get to every month. All right, thanks for watching. We'll be back with much more soon. And if you like this type of video, let us know too, and we can do more of these kind of deep dives into the numbers on rentals and other investments.